Hello and welcome back everyone, Mina is here and today we will be finishing off this series with compositing. So we started out by getting a solid track out of this footage inside of BF track, and after that I've showed you how to rig this robot character in very easy and simple 4 steps. Then we've used the umbilicals and rails to create the skid marks on the floor, and finally today I'll show you how to set up the render layers inside of Maya and compositing inside of Nuke. And since I came out from an After Effects background, I will show you how we can achieve the same results, including compositing the CG passes using alpha mattes, tracking and rotoscoping. So let's jump right to it and get it started. Alright, so what I got here is the whole scene, so let's render this and see where we get. So I'm going to Arnold render view, and I will render the scene. So as you can see, what we get is we've got our robot and the skid marks included in one shot, and if I press A to reveal the alpha, as you can see we've got the alpha and the shadows included. And it's not the best way to work when it comes in the compositing process, because what we want to do is we want to have each object on its own layer, and to do that I'm going to set up the render layer. And I will press on the plus icon to create a new layer, and I'm going to rename it to robot. And in this layer I want to have only the robot with no shadows. To do that I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a collection, and here I will add all the objects that I want to have. So in this case I'm going to add the robot and the wall panel and the floor, and I'm going to press on add. After that I'm going to create a new collection, and here we want to add the objects that we are going to overwrite its setting. So in this case I'm going to overwrite the floor and the wall panels. So to do that I'm going to add these guys in. And right now we are viewing the scene, we are not viewing this layer. So what we can do is we can activate this eye, the visibility eye, and as you can see once I activated this, now we've got only floor, the wall and the robot. In the scene we've got the skid marks because we have everything, but in this layer we have only got these 3 things, and we are going to overwrite the setting. So it's a material override, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a material override, and here I will override this with an AI standard surface. So I open the Hyper shade and I will drag and drop the AI standard surface, this material here, which will override its setting, and as you can see now it's linked. And what's special about this material is it has the enable matte is checked on, which means that these will be treated as a matte objects. Alright, so let me render this and let's see where we get. Alright, there you go. We've got the robot only, and if you press A, as you can see we've got its pure alpha, nothing else involved, and that's what we want. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for the skid marks. So I'm going to open the render layers, and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this skid marks. Okay, and if I reveal this now, the visibility icon, as you can see it's empty, so we got absolutely nothing in here. So I'm going to activate the eye for the scene so we get everything. So this time I'm going to add the wall, the ground, and these 2 guys here. So I'm going to right click, create new collection, and I'm going to add these guys. Now I will activate the visibility on this to see what we get. And in the second collection, we're going to put the things that we want to override its settings, which is the exact same thing, the ground and the wall panel. So I will add this in, and I'm going to right click and create a material override. And I will use the same standard surface with the set matte enabled. Now, if you render this, let's just see what we get. Alright, we are getting the skid marks only, and it's alpha, no shadows. Great. Alright, so now we want to have a layer for the shadows, and especially for the robot shadow. So I'm going to activate the scene, and I'm going to select my robot, and the wall, and the ground. Alright, I'm going to create a new layer, and this one I'm going to call it shadow. Right click, create new collection, and I will add these in. And since I have originally I have the shadow matte or the shadow catcher, whatever you want to call it, is put in here. So we are catching the shadow for the robot. So in this case, I don't want to override the material for the ground. Instead, I'm going to override the material for the robot. So let's select the robot, and let's create a new collection. And in here, I'm going to add the robot and going to right click and create material override. And we'll apply the same material that we have, the standard surface, with the enable matte checked on. So as you can see, immediately once it's linked, the robot gets its new material visible. So if I render this right now, we hopefully get only the shadows. Alright, so the RGB channel shows us absolutely nothing in here, but if you press A to reveal the alpha, as you can see, we got the shadow only, and the robot is set to be matte, just like the wall. So now we have the shadow on its own layer. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that I have enabled all of this. Like these are, like if you didn't enable this, it's not going to be rendered. You can come to the render and render sequence option and make sure that we have all render enabled layers is checked on. These are going to be rendered, and by enabled, which means that the render icon here is checked. Like if you want to skip the skid marks, all you have to do is to uncheck this, and it will render only the robot and the shadows. So yeah, and that will help us a lot in the composite process inside of Nuke. So I'm going to render this, and let's see what we end up with. Alright, so I have finished the render, and I've got my render layers. So I've got my master layer, my robot layer, my shadows, and the skid marks. And it's time to composite this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we are normally doing this in After Effects, and I will try to do the same inside of Nuke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my BG sequence for the background. I will right click, new come from selection, and then I'll start to load in my render layers, which are these guys in. I'll start to load this. So I've got my, I will load my robots. The shadow and the skid marks. Alright, let's add the robot. As you can see, only the robot, no shadows. And we are going to use the extractor effects to extract all the different render passes. To do that, I'm going to name this original or beauty, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to duplicate the original, and I'm going to use the extractor. Right, let's put this in here, and this will be our diffuse. So I can come in here and choose diffuse. These are all the render layers that we have. I'm going to choose diffuse, and as you can see, it's dark, and the reason for that is by default After Effects doesn't add the color management part. So all you have to do is to come to the project settings, which is file, project settings, and enable this. I will choose color match, and I will choose linearize working space. It's basically a linear workflow, and now we have got the color spec just like how it was done inside of just like the diffuse looked inside of Maya. Now we start to add this. So this one's going to be the diffuse indirect. Diffuse indirect. Yep, we're gonna add this. Next, we have the spec. I'm gonna add specular. Next, gonna be the spec direct. Duplicate this one more time, and this will be our emission. If you can see it again, its eyes. This is the emission. And lastly, the vector, the motion vector, will be used as the motion vector will be used as reference. We're going to use plugin called RSMP to use as a reference. Right, so we've composited our CG passes, and it's time to add the skid marks. Alright, there's the skid marks, and we can decrease the opacity. Let's have something in here, and we can add the shadows. And there you go. But well, inside the shadows, this uh, white edge, and that's because it's an alpha, and the robot was set to matte, so it's cutting out inside of the shadows. So a quick fix will be coming here, and very quick, just duplicate the diffuse a couple of times, and it will get rid of this edge. So to use the motion vector pass, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, and here I'm going to use a plugin called Real Smart Motion Blur, or SMB, and all I have to do is to come in here and to load my motion vector pass. Alright, so we finished the compositing of the CG passes inside of After Effects, and it's time to do the same inside of Nuke. Alright, so I am here inside of Nuke, and we will try to have the same result that we had from After Effects and do it here inside of Nuke. So first things first, what we're going to do is I'm going to edit, project settings, and for the frame range I will set this to be 184. The frame per second still 24, and the full size format is going to be an HD 720. After that, I'm going to bring in my footage by pressing the R on the keyboard in this section, which is the read node. So you can either way, you press R and you locate your footage and press and open it, or you can press tab and start to write read and use this read image. The same way, it's open up the browser and you can locate your footage. It's a sequence, and of course you can click on this icon here, which will let you know what you have, and you can play the sequence all from the browser. Alright, so I'll bring in my footage, and to view my footage I'm going to select it and press 1, and that will make the connection to the viewer. Or you can click and drag the output to the input of the viewer, and we get this, and you get the same results. Next, I'm going to bring in the render layers that I have. So I'm going to press R on the keyboard, which will create another read node and open up the browser. So I will locate my render layers files. So be here, and we've got the render layers, and we've got the skid marks, the shadows, and the robot. So open this, and you can select any one and press 1. Like I will select the read node robot and press 1, and that will reveal the robot. You can select the skid marks and press 1, reveal the skid marks, and of course the shadows. The shadows, we have nothing in the RGB, but if you press A, we have the shadow alpha. Alright, so let's start with the robot and start to have the CG passes. So in After Effects we've used the extractor to extract our CG passes, but inside of Nuke we are going to use what is called a shuffle node. So to get a shuffle node, you have to press tab, and you can press shuffle. I will connect the read node to the shuffle node and double click. The setting will open here for the shuffle node, and you can close all the settings that you have from this X and double click. It will open here again. And here in the input we have got all of our render passes. So I will choose the diffuse, and to see what we got I have to select the shuffle node, press 1 to connect it to the viewer. Now as you can see we are getting our diffuse. So it's a good idea to come here and start to rename this. So this will be our diffuse. Second will be make another shuffle, and this shuffle will be our diffuse indirect. And what you can do is if you press Control, you get this what it's called a dot node. So I will move the diffuse here, this is just a way to put together this tree. You can move downwards, you can move right, it just has to be consistent. So I'm moving downwards, that's why I have this set up. So I will connect the diffuse indirect to the this dot node, and I will create another dot node to keep it consistent downwards. So now if I select the diffuse indirect, I press 1, we are viewing the diffuse indirect. If I choose the diffuse, press 1, we are seeing the diffuse. And what we want now is to combine this together. And the way to do that is through the merge node. So we press M, and that will bring the merge node with an over operation. So the merge node has two inputs, A and B. A will be for the foreground, and B will be for the background. So whatever you want to put it over will be A, and whatever you want to be under the background is going to be B. So we are combining the diffuse and the diffuse indirect through a merge node, and the operation is called over. You can choose like the blend mode inside of After Effects, and over is like add or something like that. Alright, so if I now want to see the results, all I have to do is just select my merge node and press 1, and that will connect the merge node to the viewer. And now we are viewing the results. Now to see the difference without the merge node, without the diffuse indirect, so you can press select the node and press D, and that will basically deactivate it. It's not working. As you can see now that the lines turn to black. That indicates that it's not contributing anything to the merge. So that's before and that's after. That's without the diffuse indirect, and that's after the diffuse indirect. So I'm going to press tab and create another shuffle. Bring in the other channels that we have. So here I will use the specular, and I'm going to call it spec. And we're going to use another merge node to merge this together. So another way to add the merge node instead of just typing, what you can do is you can press M on the keyboard, which is a shortcut to add it in. So I'm going to just add this to the, or just move it between these two nodes, and it will make the connection. So it added this to be the background, and our new input will be for the foreground. And right away you can see now we are getting the specular appears over the diffuse. That's before, that's after, before and after. Alright, let's bring in the another, let's bring in the shuffle, and the shuffle will hold this time the specular indirect. So double click spec indirect, specular direct, and another way to bring in the merge node is to say I want to add a specular over the merge, so the specular direct will be the foreground. I'm going to select it, and after that I'm going to shift select my merge, and I'm going to press M, and that will create another merge node with the inputs and outputs connected. So that's before and after the specular direct. Alright, let's add the emission and bring in another shuffle, and that will be added as the emission. And let's call this emission. I'm going to select my shuffle node, shift select the merge, press M. And there you go, we've added the emission. That's before, that's after. Great. Alright. So we've added our CG passes that we've rendered. And now it's time to add the backgrounds. So to do that, I'm going to add a merge node. Okay, let's bring a merge node, and this will be the background, and the robot will be foreground. So I'm going to connect this here, and the output will be over. And well, the connection is right, but there is something wrong. We are getting this ghosty effect, and anytime you get this ghost effect, it means that you don't have a proper alpha. So you can so let me show you what I mean. If I selected this merge, press 1, this our robot, press A to reveal the alpha, and you get this colors inside of alpha. It should be pure white, so that indicates that we don't have an alpha. So we need to use another node called shuffle copy to bring in the alpha, and the shuffle copy has two inputs. One, you are going to take the alpha from, and two, you are going to take the RGB information from. So I know that we're going to take the information from this merge for the RGB, but for the alpha I need to make another shuffle, no, not merge, shuffle, and this one I will connect it to the dot nodes, and I will right double click, and that will be the alpha. So if I select this shuffle, let's call it alpha, and if I press 1, as you can see, we have a pure alpha. I'm telling the shuffle copy to take the information, the alpha, from this, from here, from this place, and the RGB values, which is a color, from the merge. Now all I have to do is to connect the output to the input of over, and then connect this to the viewer, and we've got our robot. So that's before we had the alpha, and that's after. Alright, great. Now what I want to do is to add the skid marks. So I'll bring in the skid marks, and within a merge, I'll press create a merge node. I will connect this in here, and shift, and I will connect this. But the problem now is the skid marks is connected to A, which means that A is above B. So that's why we are getting the skid marks over the robot. So we need to have the other way around. And a quick way to reverse the inputs is to select the node and press Shift X, and that will reverse. So now the skid marks on the background, and the robot is over the skid marks. But we're having the same issue that we had with the robot before, so we need to do the exact same thing that we've did with the robot, and tell nuke where is the alpha. Instead of just I can copy this and do the same thing, we can instead, what we can do is I can combine this and tell nuke to use this as an alpha. So let's merge this, and the output will be connected to input 1, and that will be the alpha. And bring to here, and there you go. Alright, now what are we seeing? We are having a the merge as an input for the alpha. So if you press double click on this merge, say we want to have to decrease the opacity for this for the skid marks, and the way to do that, if you open the merge, we are merging A over B. So we have a slider here. This is the opacity slider. It's called mix, so we can decrease this. So say we will have it like 0.3. Okay, maybe a little more stronger, you know. All right, so next we are going to add these shadows. So this is the shadow only layer separate. I will merge the shadow layer instead of just merge it over here. I need the shadow to go in the merge to the alpha 1. So the way to do that is first I'm going to merge these together, and the output I will merge it to A. So to do that I'm going to press M, and this will be the merge. This will be A over B, which is a shadow, and there you go, and the A will be the output. So now, since we have lowered the opacity in this layer, I will make it full, like 100. And we can decrease the opacity for the merge to control the skin mark. So double click and we can just decrease its opacity. And we have the shadow on its own layer. But what if I wanted to decrease the opacity for the shadow? I mean, we are decreasing the opacity for A over B, so if we want to decrease the opacity of the shadow or have another kind of operation, what I can do is I can delete this dot and make another merge. Okay, and I will merge this to be A and the output to the input of the merge. And now I have full control for the shadow itself, so I can decrease its opacity or I can change its blending mode. And we have the same result that we had inside of After Effects, except for the motion vector. So to do the motion vector, I'm going to use a node called vector blur. I will add this in, just get some action here, just about here, and that will detect the motion blur. So what we have to do is to come to the UV channel, and instead of none we can choose a motion vector, and the presets we have the render engines. So I have used Arnold, so I'm going to use Arnold, choose Arnold, and for the motion amount you can start to add the amount. As you can see, we are getting some motion, we're getting some motion blur. And I like to check normalize. Sometimes it has some weird effects in some places, so normalize just make it more not visible. Like we've got some issues here, but with normalize it disappears, like this before and this after. One last thing that you can do is you can use what is called a backdrop to combine all of this in one group. So I will just move it over here, and you can bring it in here, so it will just be around this area. Now if I select this, you can move the whole group. So and you can change its color. Double click over the option, change its colors, make it reddish, and you can call it like CG passes, and if you zoomed in, it's called CG passes. And we can increase the font, something like this, maybe more. Just know that when you open your project, this is the CG passes. If I want to do any adjustments, it will be here, and you can have another for the tracking, another for the rotoscoping. It will be so much easier to work. Next up we will see the difference between tracking inside of After Effects and Nuke.